We are one night removed from WrestleMania, and this is what happened live from the Palace in Auburn Hills, Michigan. At WrestleMania 12, Ric Flair finally recaptured the WWF World title, ending the 7-month reign of Bret the Hitman Hart. The Undertaker defeated Too Cold Scorpio The Undertaker defeated Too Cold Scorpio. In the match of the night, Owen Hart defeated Ricky Steamboat, shocking the world, defeating the Dragon. In the first of what was an 8-man tag team match the month before, that broke down into 4 separate singles matches. Well, 2 singles matches and a tag team match. The Unabomb defeated Tracy Smothers, and then Shawn Michaels in his first pay-per-view match back from filming a movie defeated Jeff Jarrett via disqualification after Jimmy Hart stuck his nose where it didn't belong. Brian Lee defeated Lance Storm to become the Intercontinental Champion, as Brian Lee won a fatal 4-way #1 contender match the month before at In Your House, and Lance Storm dropped the belt because Lance is off to WCW now, and Brian Lee is staying put and has gold in the group and beat Chris Candido to championship gold. Speaking of championship gold, the Hollywood Blondes lost to the Godwins, as the Godwins retained the tag team titles, outsmarting the Blondes. Getting after Henry Godwin decided to get himself counted out, knowing he would retain the tag team titles. I don't know why I thought the Godwins had the tag team titles, but if you go back to March week 2, the week before WrestleMania, live from the New Haven Coliseum, the Godwins shocked the world in defeating the Hollywood Blondes for the tag team titles the week before. And in the week before, they slopped Bobby Heenan. They slopped Bobby Heenan using their bucket for the first time that they'd been carrying to the ring with them for weeks. We finally got to see what was in the bucket when they slopped Bobby Heenan, and then that got him the tag team title shot against the Blondes, as the Blondes had not defended their titles in long enough that J.J. Dillon passed down the decree that the Godwins would get the title shot against the Blondes. Back to WrestleMania. Art Barr and Eddie Guerrero. Eddie defeated his former friend Art Barr, but Art Barr didn't leave on his own. Didn't leave it there, beating down Guerrero after the match. Terry Funk defeated Papa Shango. Shane Douglas defeated his former tag team partner in the Golden franchise, but Shane didn't do it without a little assistance from the Tights. Raven and Mankind defeated the Rock and Roll Express. Jaguar Yokota defeated Candy Divine to retain the women's title. And in the opening match of WrestleMania, Vader defeated Candido via disqualification after the Harris brothers ran in to help. And as you see, we had some pre-show matches as well, but this was WrestleMania 12. Now, let's head into the Raw after Mania. We are sticking in the Great Lakes this week for the Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania 12. Well, that's good to hear. Ric Flair and Johnny Grunge are getting along. Surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly, no real feuds ended after WrestleMania. No real feuds ended after WrestleMania other than Brian Lee versus Lance Storm for reasons that I mentioned earlier. But other than that, nothing really changed, or nothing's going to really change after WrestleMania, because I have the philosophy that that's what this is for. And that's where we're going to go with it, in my opinion. Well, what would the opening episode of Raw be without Mean Gene Okerlund interviews the new WWF champion, Ric Flair? Well, and since we're mentioning things that are going to take place after WrestleMania, Alex Wright, Steve McMichael, Barry Buchanan, Bubba Dudley, and New Jack are all a part, and Dirty White Boy, are all a part of a mini tournament where the winner of the tournament, I should say, will earn a contract with the WWE. The winner of the tournament will earn a contract with the WWE. Right now, though, they are all on pay-per-appearance contracts, but the winner will get an exclusive contract with the WWE. What I'm trying to do is trying to at first look around and see who wasn't at WrestleMania to book them on this show to make sure that they're at least accounted for on the show after WrestleMania, even if they weren't at WrestleMania. Exactly. You know. Mikey Whipwreck is B-Show fodder right now. I guess Brian Lee could go against Mo. Why not? Quick and easy match for the new Intercontinental Champion. As far as Rob Van Dam's concerned, if you look at the WrestleMania pre-show, Medusa and Steve Armstrong beat Bison Kimura and Rob Van Dam. Rob's actually the one who took the fall in the match, so that's why Rob is going up against Steve Armstrong to try and get the win back. And this is the grouping I was referring to earlier that helped Candido get the victory. To escape with my health. And the C Championship. This is, if you're curious, yes, this is where we plant the seeds to make sure where maybe Brian Lee turns babyface and Chris Candido can't put his ego aside for his friend, or somebody who's supposed to be his friend. Now this is when Jeff Jarrett, Jimmy Hart, last night, it was a fix from the start, and that's why Jimmy got involved. to stop the fix. Also tonight, J.J. Dillon, I wanted to do this at WrestleMania, but I forgot Andre was here, if I'm being honest. No, this is not going to lead to a match between Andre and J.J. Dillon officially welcomes Andre the Giant into the WWE Hall of Fame. And Yokozuna interrupts, staring down at the Giant. We'll be back in a second. Now we are back, as I skipped ahead a little bit in the recording, or in the booking, to avoid having a ridiculously long video, because I didn't know how long the booking was going to take, because as you could tell from early on, it didn't really seem like I knew what I was doing. And for the most part, I really didn't. So that's why I took a little bit of extra time off camera to try and figure out a plan, and that's what I did. Arrives with his own version of events. Oh, the Godwins want to be unscripted. Okay, good for them. Maybe this feud with the Hollywood Blondes is actually helping the Godwins. Don't ask how I got Henry and Phineas to where they are. Knowing that Brian Pillman is in the Brian Pillman is up here in the high 60s. Steve Austin is in the mid 50s to low 60s, and both the Godwins are in the mid 40s, but the Godwins defeated Pillman and Austin, simply put, because I wanted new tag team champions. Simple. I wanted new tag team champions, so that's what I did. Ric Flair. Who can he fight? Well, Honky Tonk Man did win a Battle Royal last night, so let's give it to the Honky Tonk Man. Let's put him in 12 minutes. Let's stick Bret Hart at ringside, and then Bret Hart could talk about being #1 contender, or wanting his, going for his rematch when the time is right. And then post-match challenge. Yeah, I don't have to do it that way. I can do it this way. Bret grabs the post-match, let's be specific, grabs the mic to challenge Ric Flair to a rematch for WWF Championship. And Flair accepts. Well, you can't, you got only so much space. So, this is Raw after WrestleMania. I know it isn't exactly modern WWE standards with, big debuts and, this and that. But, fact of the matter is, it keeps the momentum going. It keeps us on our trajectory to Saturday night's main event, which is the next big event. It keeps what's supposed to keep. It keeps going what is supposed to keep going. It plants seeds. It's a solid show. Not to toot my own horn, but toot toot. Let's jump into it and see what happens. Ric Flair kicks off the show, introduced as the new WWF champion after he defeated Bret Hart last night at WrestleMania 12. This is Flair's first world title in almost 2 years. He has not held a world title since 1994, as Ricky Steamboat, Bret Hart, and The Undertaker held the title in 1995. Hell, I mean, as I mentioned, Bret Hart won the title, I believe, in August 1995, and kept the title till WrestleMania 1996. So that's, Bret won it at WrestleMania, lost it at WrestleMania. Either way, now we got a new champion. First time in 2 years, Ric Flair is world champion. Brian Lee defeats Mo, continuing Brian Lee's trajectory up the mountain. And then Chris Candido puts the spotlight on him, pointing out how lucky he was that the Harris brothers helped him against Vader, pointing out the fact that we, the group, won the Intercontinental title, not giving Brian Lee his just cause, as Brian Lee won the Intercontinental title by himself. Sonny wasn't at ringside, the Harris brothers didn't get involved, Chris Candido was nowhere to be found. Brian Lee won the title by himself. But Candido made sure to point out the group won the belt, not Brian Lee. Rob Van Dam gets his win back against Steve Armstrong in a solid match. I gotta say, good job from both guys. Rob Van Dam's got, some 63 in ring performance. That's better than some guy, I think that's better than Brian Lee, to be honest with you. Jeff Jarrett blames it on the referee. Going into WrestleMania, Jeff Jarrett said that J.J. Dillon wouldn't have showed up to Raw Basically, Jeff Jarrett made a comment saying that J.J. Dillon shows favoritism to certain people, and he's showing favoritism to Shawn Michaels because Shawn Michaels is a movie star. And Jeff Jarrett now claims the referee was in on the fix. Mark Mero against Mosh. As you remember from the recap earlier in the show, Mark Mero lost, came up short against Shane Douglas at WrestleMania, but now it's time for a change, because Mark Mero officially introduces his new manager, Sable. I believe Sable debuted earlier this month, at the beginning of the month, at the beginning of March. Meaning, if you know anything about TEW, she was available. She became available as a rookie, a newly debuted talent in March, when I entered the month of March, and now she's right in here with Mark Mero as his manager. Vader comments on what Candido said earlier tonight, calling Candido a coward and the Harris brothers his lackeys, and saying that things are far from over between him and Chris Candido. Tama defeats Rocco Rock. Oliver Humperdinck's other client, I believe we saw Yokozuna, oh wait, no, that was off camera. Yokozuna's his other client, to clarify. Speaking of clients, Gary Hart, who's been pretty quiet since I released Mike Awesome, who was his client. Gary Hart pops up. Well, let's start from the beginning. The Rock and Roll Express appear and, comment on coming up short against Raven and Mankind last night at WrestleMania, and question if maybe they've lost a step and maybe they need to step back and rethink if the Rock and Roll still got what it takes to perform at the top of their game. Gary Hart interrupts, but in actuality, it is just to distract Rock and Roll and allow Diesel and Ahmed Johnson to jump the Rock and Roll Express. And it seems like Gary Hart and his team want to end the Rock and Roll Express and make their decision easier. If you noticed the quick glance at the pre-show last night at WrestleMania, the Rock and Roll Express, the Ahmed Johnson and Diesel won a 4 corners elimination tag team match on the pre-show. And it seems like the new tag team is already shooting for the stars. And I got them shooting for the stars, going after the Rock and Roll Express. As I mentioned earlier, Andre the Giant will get inducted into the Hall of Fame tonight. The first tag team match in a while for Slick's Boys, the Bruiser, and Brian Clark. Bruiser Bedlam from Smoky Mountain fame and Brian Clark. Brian Clark has been injured recently and just returned a few weeks ago. And now that he's back, Slick's team is back at full strength and ready to be taken seriously again. And they get a pretty easy win against the Canadian Glamour Boys. We kick it to the announcers with highlights of Steamboat vs. Owen Hart from WrestleMania, and Vince McMahon and Tony Schiavone let us know that Owen Hart will be on Raw next week. Too Cold Scorpio defeats Butch Reed, as Scorpio needed a win after losing to The Undertaker the night before. Just get him back on the get his momentum back. Don't fall asleep at the wheel. I know where I'm going with him, and I know where I want to go with him, and this is where he's going. As I said, he was feuding with the Undertaker. He said, Undertaker beat me fair and square last night, but I proved I'm not afraid of you, and I will prove at Saturday night's main event that I can beat you. All I need is one more chance. Scorpio may have had his noggin knocked loose last night that he wants another match with the Undertaker. I would probably put this on Bobby Heenan and Wendy Richter more than the Godwins, but this type of segment more than helps the Godwins not only gain popularity, but gain confidence on the mic, as, if you remember, the Godwins were unscripted, and, let's see if this... No worker improvements, but Bobby Heenan being in the segment helped, Wendy Richter being in the segment helped, and it helped to the point of where Tony Schiavone and Vince McMahon actually looked pretty weak at the announce desk because of how good Wendy and Bobby Heenan were. And if you look at the bottom, performed poorly, but it still got an 80. So this is, I'm very interested in this feud thanks to Mr. Heenan. And that's why I had to figure something out for Bobby Heenan, because I know Bobby Heenan could be an asset to the company. Maybe I should stop having the Honky Tonk Man main event. Not the best main event. A pretty good post-match segment, though, as Bret Hart, who was on commentary for that match, challenges Ric Flair to a rematch at Saturday night's main event for the WWF Championship, and Flair accepts the Hitman's challenge for a rematch. And then we move to the final segment. Andre the Giant officially being inducted into the WWF Hall of Fame. But Yokozuna makes his presence felt, interrupting this segment and getting into a staring match with the Giant. As I mentioned, if I didn't mention, I'm going to mention it now. No, Andre the Giant will not be competing. He is far gone from being, in my opinion, being capable to compete. But that doesn't mean that this is the last time you will see the newly christened WWF Hall of Famer. Now I know that, some might be pointing out, oh, how is this the transition to the Attitude Era? How is this, how does this help move forward? Well, I mean, first things first, not every show needs to push forward with the transition from the Attitude Era. I mean, into, with the new, not every show needs to move the ball, keep the ball rolling, but a positive show, a productive show, is just as good in keeping the ball rolling and moving in the direction of attitude as, somebody getting hit by a car, or a big parking lot brawl happening, or this guy cursing, or this, somebody flipping somebody off, or, a bikini contest, or whatever the heck, or whatever the fuck. It doesn't need to be such a blatant showing of attitude, like I mentioned in the previous, last week's episode. The Sandman is slowly turning to the Sandman from Mr. Sandman by adding little details into his character, like after his matches, go in and drink a beer. He lost a match. Oh, he's gonna smoke a cigarette. Now, last week on All American, he came out with a cigarette. But that's the thing. It's little by little by little we move to the Attitude Era. Not overnight we're gonna change, because adding little microcosms of attitude into the current product is better than going full bore, because then we don't have to up the ante on a week-to-week basis until we get to the point where we don't know what we're doing next. Let me ask you to post your thoughts down in the comment section below. A tag team match at the pay-per-view. Rocco Rock and Johnny Grunge, the Public Enemy. Tama versus Tama and Yokozuna. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below, as Andre the Giant would be at ringside with the Public Enemy against Oliver Humperdinck and his contingent of monsters, Yoko and Tama. Let me know down in the comment section below, and until then, see you next time.